A scrawny, overlooked horse standing in a dusty field, ignored by every wealthy buyer who passed by. The local millionaires took one glance and scoffed, dismissing it as worthless. But one poor farmer, struggling to make ends meet, saw something no one else did. He took a gamble so risky it could have ruined him. And then, in a twist no one saw coming, a buyer from another country arrived. What happened next? Well, let's just say this farmer's life changed in ways even he couldn't have dreamed of. This is the story of how the rich and powerful missed an opportunity right under their noses, while a simple farmer, armed with nothing but instinct and a little bit of luck, struck gold. The millionaires laughed when they saw the horse. They called it weak, untrained, a lost cause. But the farmer? He saw potential. And when that mysterious foreign buyer showed up, everything changed. The offer that came next wasn't just good, it was life-changing. The kind of money that turns a struggling man into wealthier than those who once looked down on him. But here's the thing, this isn't just a rags-to-riches story. Because before that jaw-dropping moment, before the farmer's life flipped upside down, there was struggle. There was doubt. There were nights when he wondered if he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. And then the buyer arrived. Who was this person? Why did they see value where others saw nothing? And what secret did this horse hold that made it worth a fortune? The millionaires never saw it coming. They never imagined that the horse they dismissed would be the very thing that made a poor farmer richer than all of them combined. But the real question is, what happened when they found out? When the men who once laughed at him realized their mistake? The farmer had spent his whole life working the land, season after season, barely scraping by. Every morning, he woke before the sun, his hands rough from years of labor, his back aching from the weight of endless toil. The land was harsh, and money was tight, so tight that some nights he wondered if he'd even have enough to feed his family the next day. But he was stubborn, the kind of man who believed in hard work and quiet perseverance. And then, one evening, as he walked through his small, weathered stable, he saw the horse everyone had rejected. The animal wasn't much to look at, thin, with a dull coat and a limp that made the wealthy buyers turn up their noses. The local horse traders had all passed on him, calling him damaged goods. Even the other farmers in the village shook their heads, saying the creature would never be worth the feed it ate. But the farmer? He saw something different. Maybe it was the way the horse lifted its head when he spoke, as if it understood every word. Maybe it was the fire in its eyes, a spark of defiance that refused to die. Whatever it was, the farmer couldn't ignore it. Against all advice, he traded his last good plow for the horse, a move that left his neighbors whispering behind his back. "He's lost his mind," they muttered. "That horse will be the death of him." Even his own family hesitated, fear in their eyes as they watched him pour what little resources he had left into this broken animal. But the farmer didn't care. He spent sleepless nights tending to the horse, nursing its injuries, feeding it the last of his grain when he had nothing left for himself. And slowly, something incredible began to happen. The horse grew stronger. Its coat regained its shine, its muscles filled out, and that limp? It vanished, as if it had never been there. The farmer started taking the horse to small local races, nothing fancy, just dusty tracks where village boys placed bets with loose change. And every time, the horse won. Not by a little, by miles. Word began to spread, but the wealthy men in town still refused to believe it. "Beginner's luck," they sneered. "That nag will fail when it counts." Then, one evening, a stranger rode into town. He wasn't from around here. His clothes were finer, his accent unfamiliar. He moved through the village like a shadow, asking questions, watching. And when his eyes landed on the farmer's horse, he stopped dead in his tracks. The way he looked at the animal sent a chill down the farmer's spine. It wasn't just interest, it was recognition, as if this stranger knew something no one else did. The man approached the farmer with an offer so shocking it made his hands tremble. The number he named was more money than the farmer had ever seen in his life, enough to buy land, build a home, secure his family's future 10 times over. But before the farmer could even respond, the stranger leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "There's something special about this horse," he said. "Something rare. And if you sell it to me, you'll never have to worry again." The farmer's heart pounded. This was it, the moment that could change everything. But something in the stranger's tone made him hesitate. Why was this man so desperate to buy a horse no one else wanted? What did he know that the farmer didn't? And most importantly, what would happen if he said no? Because here's the thing about deals that seem too good to be true, they usually are. And as the farmer stood there, staring into the stranger's unreadable eyes, he realized this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about something far bigger, something dangerous. And the worst part? The millionaires who had laughed at him, they were watching. And they hated losing. The farmer's hand shook as he clutched the stranger's offer, a sum so large it didn't feel real. His mind raced. Sell the horse, and his family would never want for anything again. But that look in the stranger's eye, it wasn't just admiration, it was hunger. The kind of look a man gets when he's found something priceless. The farmer hesitated, then did something no one expected. He said he needed time to think. The stranger's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course," he said smoothly, but the way his fingers twitched told a different story. "Take the night. But know this, opportunities like this don't come twice." Then he was gone, melting back into the shadows as quickly as he'd appeared. That night, the farmer couldn't sleep. He paced the small barn, watching his horse rest peacefully in the moonlight. It wasn't just an animal anymore. It was hope. But hope had a way of attracting trouble. By morning, the village was buzzing. Whispers slithered through the marketplace. "Did you hear? The foreigner offered a fortune for that worthless horse." The wealthy men who had once scoffed now watched the farmer with narrowed eyes. One of them, a man with a gold-ringed finger and a reputation for getting what he wanted, cornered the farmer near the well. "You're not seriously considering that outsider's offer, are you?" he asked, voice dripping with false concern. "Sell to me instead. I'll give you a fair price." "Fair?" The farmer almost laughed. This was the same man who had mocked him for months. Now, suddenly, he was interested. Something wasn't right. Then came the rumors. A stable boy claimed he'd overheard the stranger speaking in a strange language, muttering about bloodlines and royal stock. Another villager swore the horse bore a faint marking, a tiny, almost invisible brand like the ones used by breeders in far-off kingdoms. The pieces clicked together slowly. This wasn't just any horse. It was something lost. Something stolen. Something hunted. The farmer's blood ran cold. If that was true, then selling the horse might mean signing its death warrant. But keeping it? That could be even worse. 2 days later, the stranger returned, only this time. He wasn't alone. 3 men stood behind him, their faces hard, their hands never far from their belts. "Have you decided?" the stranger asked, his voice still polite, but his eyes were stone. The farmer swallowed hard. He could feel the weight of the village watching, the rich man's glare burning into his back. The horse, sensing the tension, stamped nervously in its stall. Then, from the edge of the crowd, a new voice cut through the silence, a voice the farmer hadn't expected to hear again. "I think," it said, "you'll want to hear what I have to say before anyone makes a deal." All heads turned. Standing there, dusty from the road, was the last person anyone thought would show up. And the look on his face? That was the moment the farmer knew this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about survival. The stranger at the edge of the crowd stepped forward, his face half hidden beneath a tattered hood. The air grew thick with tension as all eyes locked onto him. This wasn't just some passerby. The way he carried himself, the way his gaze locked onto the foreign buyer with quiet recognition, something dark and unspoken passed between them. The farmer's pulse pounded in his ears. He knew this man. Not well, but enough. Years ago, before the drought, before the debts, this man had been a traveling horse trader, one of the few who treated the villagers fairly. But the look on his face now? That wasn't the face of a trader. That was the face of a man who had seen trouble and wasn't afraid of it. "You," the foreign buyer said, his voice suddenly tight, "you're supposed to be..." "Gone?" the hooded man finished, his voice rough but steady. Funny how life works. He turned to the farmer, and for the first time, there was urgency in his eyes. Don't sell that horse. Not to him. Not to any of them. The rich man with the gold rings let out a sharp laugh. And why should he listen to you? Some washed-up drifter? The hooded man didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of parchment yellowed with age, its edges frayed. He held it out to the farmer. This horse isn't just fast. It's the last of its kind. Bred for kings. Stolen as a foal. And now, there are people who'd kill to get it back. The farmer's hands trembled as he unfolded the paper. There, sketched in faded ink, was a horse's horse down to the faint star-shaped mark on its forehead. Beneath it, words in a language he couldn't read, but the crest stamped at the bottom? That he recognized. The royal seal of a kingdom across the mountains. A kingdom known for its wars and its secrets. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The foreign buyers' men shifted, their hands now openly resting on the hilts of their knives. The rich man's face twisted into something ugly. This is nonsense, he spat. That horse is nothing special. Just a trick to drive up the price. But the farmer wasn't listening anymore. He was staring at his horse, really seeing it for the first time. The way it stood taller than the others. The way its ears pricked at distant sounds no human could hear. The way it had always seemed. Different. The hooded man stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper only the farmer could hear. They'll take it from you, one way or another. You need to run. Tonight. The farmer's throat went dry. Run? Where? He had no money, no allies, just a piece of land that barely grew crops and a family depending on him. But as he looked around at the faces watching him, the greed in the rich man's eyes, the cold calculation in the foreigners, the fear in his neighbors, he realized something terrifying. He wasn't just fighting for a horse anymore. He was fighting for his life. And then a sound cut through the night. Distant, but unmistakable. Hooves. Not just one or two. Dozens. The foreign buyer's head snapped toward the noise, his face going pale. The hooded man cursed under his breath. Too late. The farmer spun toward the road, his heart in his throat. Torches flickered in the distance. They were coming. And this time, they weren't here to bargain. The torchlight grew brighter, cutting through the night like a warning. The farmer's stomach twisted. This wasn't just a handful of riders. The thunder of hooves shook the ground as shadows poured into the village square, their armor glinting under the flickering flames. These weren't merchants or traders. These were soldiers. The foreign buyer's face went slack with recognition and fear. He backed away, his men forming a tight circle around him, but it was too late. The lead rider dismounted, his polished boots crushing the dirt as he strode forward. The village fell deathly silent. You've been keeping something from us, the soldier said, his voice like gravel. He wasn't speaking to the farmer. He was staring straight at the foreign buyer. Did you really think you could steal from the crown and disappear? The farmer's breath caught. Steal from the crown? His hands clenched around the old parchment, the proof of what his horse really was. The hooded man grabbed the farmer's arm, yanking him back. They're not here for him, he hissed. They're here for the horse. And they'll kill anyone in their way. The soldier's gaze snapped to the farmer, then to the stable behind him. A slow, cruel smile spread across his face. Ah. So, this is where it's been hiding. The rich man with the gold rings suddenly lunged forward, his voice shrill. I had nothing to do with this. The horse belongs to the farmer. Take it and go. Betrayal. Just like that. The soldier ignored him, stepping closer. Hand it over. Now. Or we burn this village to the ground. The farmer's blood turned to ice. He looked at the faces around him, his neighbors, wide-eyed with terror. His family, huddled in the doorway of their home. The horse, watching him with those knowing eyes. Then movement in the shadows. The hooded man wasn't standing beside him anymore. A blade flashed. The soldier's smile vanished as the tip of a dagger pressed against his throat from behind. "Wrong move," the hooded man growled. Chaos erupted. And in that moment, the farmer realized this wasn't just about a horse. This was a war, and he was right in the middle of it. The soldier froze as the dagger bit into his throat. A single drop of blood slid down his neck. The entire village held its breath. The farmer could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears, too fast, too loud. One wrong move, and everything would explode. Then the hooded man spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "Tell your men to lower their weapons." Now. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the soldier gave a barely perceptible nod. Swords clattered to the ground. The tension in the air didn't ease, it just changed. The farmer's hands were shaking, but his mind was clear for the first time in days. He stepped forward, the old parchment crumpled in his fist. "This horse belongs to me," he said, his voice stronger than he felt. "Not to you. Not to the crown. Not to anyone else." The soldier's eyes flickered with something unexpected, not anger, but resignation. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," he muttered. The hooded man tightened his grip. "Oh, he understands. Better than you think." Then movement from the stable. The horse stepped forward, its head high, its gait regal. No limp. No hesitation. It moved like it owned the ground beneath its hooves. The soldiers gasped. Even the foreign buyer's men took a step back. Because in that moment, the farmer saw it too. This wasn't just a horse. This was a king. The soldier sagged against the hooded man's grip. "You have no idea what you've done," he whispered. The farmer reached out, and the horse pressed its nose into his palm like it had done 100 times before. But this time, something was different. This time, the farmer understood. The hooded man's dagger didn't waver. "Run," he said to the farmer. "Take the horse and go. Now." The farmer didn't hesitate. He swung onto the horse's back, no saddle, no reins, just trust. As they turned toward the open road, the village erupted behind them. Shouts, clashing steel, the sound of fire catching. But the farmer didn't look back. The wind tore at his clothes as the horse's powerful strides ate up the ground. Faster than anything he'd ever ridden. Faster than anything should be possible. And then hoofbeats behind them. Someone was following. The farmer leaned low over the horse's neck. "Go," he breathed. The horse obeyed. But as they raced into the night, one thought burned brighter than all the rest. The horse carried them through the night like a shadow fleeing the dawn, its powerful legs devouring the distance between danger and freedom. The farmer clung tight, his hands buried in the animal's mane, the wind whipping tears from his eyes. Behind them, the glow of the burning village faded into the darkness, along with everything he'd ever known. By morning, they reached the foothills, where the air smelled of pine and wild herbs. The horse slowed at last, its sides heaving, steam rising from its coat in the cool mountain air. The farmer slid off and collapsed onto the soft earth, his legs trembling not from exhaustion, but from the weight of what had happened. He'd lost everything: his home, his land, maybe even his family. But as he looked at the horse standing tall against the sunrise, he realized something unexpected. He'd gained something too. A chance. The sound of approaching footsteps made him tense, but it was only the hooded man, his face bruised, his clothes torn. He carried a leather satchel that jingled with every step. "They won't follow," he said, dropping the bag at the farmer's feet. It spilled open, revealing enough gold to start a dozen new lives. The foreign buyer won't be troubling anyone again. And as for the soldiers, he shrugged, but the dark look in his eyes told the rest. The farmer stared at the fortune in the dirt. "Why help me?" The man knelt beside the horse, running a hand along its flank with surprising gentleness. "Because this animal isn't just a horse. It's hope. And the world's got too little of that left." He met the farmer's eyes. "Keep running. Change your name. Start over. But whatever you do, don't let them take what's yours again." As the man turned to leave, the farmer called after him. "Who are you really? A pause. Then, without looking back, someone who lost his chance. Don't waste yours. The farmer never saw him again. Years later, in a green valley far from that burned village, a thriving horse ranch stood where there had once been wilderness. Travelers spoke of the place in whispers of the legendary stallion that sired champions of the wealthy landowner who'd appeared from nowhere with nothing but a single remarkable horse. They said he was fair in his dealings, generous to those in need, and that he always kept a loaded pistol near at hand. On quiet evenings, when the sun set behind the mountains, the farmer, now a respected man, would walk to the highest hill on his property. There, beneath an ancient oak, he'd pat the neck of the old stallion that still followed him like a shadow. Together, they'd watch the horizon where the road disappeared into the distance, waiting. Not out of fear, but with the quiet certainty that someday, the past would come calling again. And when it did, he'd be ready.